So there I was, stuck in traffic, and I see this woman screaming at me. So I roll down my window to see what's going on, and suddenly traffic starts moving. A few minutes later, traffic has stopped again, and out of the corner of my eye, I see another person yelling at me. I was already on edge, so I was pretty quick to roll down my window, but as soon as I did, a freaking ambulance passes by, and I can't hear what the guy's saying over the sirens. So I sat there, confused, waiting on the ambulance to pass, and as soon as it got far enough away to where I could hear what the guy was saying, BAM! Dude gets nailed with a fountain drink, and he is soaked and pissed, and I'm just sitting there wondering if I did that with my mind somehow. Then, to my surprise, guess who shows up? The lady that was yelling at me before walks up to his car, and they start arguing. Turns out they were screaming at each other, and I was just in the middle lane. She found a hole behind the mirror inside her hotel room's bathroom. And when the police looked inside, they found blankets, clothes, cigarettes, and what looked like a door at the end of a long, dark hallway. One officer was small enough to fit inside, and when they got to the end, they took a corner and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Hole after hole after hole, every single one leading to a different room at the hotel. Suddenly, all those complaints of the stolen items and the room smelling like cigarettes, it made sense. But the craziest part of this whole thing is that there were no doors back there. It was just holes behind mirrors, which means that somebody was paying to stay there so they could steal from other people, or it was an inside job. What do you think? It's a Sunday morning and I'm delivering pizzas to this church that all the other drivers hate going to. And that's because the door is usually locked and you don't know whether to knock and interrupt the sermon or wait or whatever. But luckily this time there was a guy at the door and he told me that there was a table backstage for the pizzas. So I find the table that he's talking about, but half this table is on the stage where everybody can see me. So I just unload the pizzas as fast as I can so no one notices me. But then I hear, "Excuse me, sir, could you come here for a second?" So I make my way down center stage and the preacher lady's like, "How much do we owe you?" So I tell her, and then she pulls out this collection plate and hands it to me. "That ought to cover it, and you can keep the rest." And I'm just like, "Thanks?" And then she's like, "So, are we gonna see you here next Sunday?" And I said, "No, I don't work next Sunday." And then I get in my car and I drive away. Years later, I realized that she was inviting me to church. I just thought she was talking about pizza. Nobody was buying this man's food, so he took out his iPhone and he glued it to the ground in front of his stand. And as people walked by, they would notice it, but they wouldn't draw attention to it. Instead, they would stand over it and order some food. And once the man turned around to get their order ready, they would pretend to drop something, go to pick it up, and they'd try to pick up the iPhone as well. Only, it wouldn't budge. So awkwardly, they'd stand back up, only to be met with the food that they now have to pay for. Ridiculous or genius? That last short got me 54 million views and over $6,000, and my other shorts, they don't do too bad either. This is now my job, and it can be your job too if you got 2 hours to spare. So, when you're ready to go viral, go to viral.school. On to the next short. So there they were, 10 prisoners staring at a toilet. Now, some say the plumber was in on it, some say he was threatened, but the moment he turned off the water, they ripped that toilet off the wall and got to work. Now, the hole was already there, they just had to get through the bars. Lucky for them, they happened to have the tools to do just that. But once they got through, they had another issue. The razor wire fence. Now, it's being investigated on who actually did this, but somebody gave these dudes a massive blanket and they had no problems getting over that fence. The next morning, when the guards finally noticed what had happened, they found this message left behind. The craziest part of this whole thing, though, is one of these dudes would have gotten out in 2 months. This man was stuck in traffic when suddenly, he really had to poop. And as he's looking around for the nearest exit, out of the corner of his eye, he sees a porta potty. Do I have time? He wondered. And that's when it hit him. I'll just check Google Maps. 15-minute delay. I got time. So he puts it in park, turns on the blinkies, and he makes his way to salvation. But the moment he sat down, his worst fear came true. Traffic started moving. Someone kept eating my dad's lunch at his construction job, so one day he decides to put this in his food. This isn't normal hot sauce, this is pepper extract, and he dumped the whole bottle. So lunchtime comes around and my dad walks into the break area, and this is what he sees. According to his construction buddies, here's what happened. The dude is sitting there eating, and then he starts coughing. And then he runs to the fridge, and I guess there wasn't any milk, because then he starts chugging coffee creamer. And when that ran out, he starts smashing pieces of bread and sticking his head under the sink. They had to call the ambulance. So tell me, did he deserve it? Teenagers kept running over this man's mailbox, so he dug a hole 5 foot deep, but it wasn't for them to fall into. No, he filled it with concrete, stuck a massive steel pole into it, let it dry, and then he built a mailbox around it. And as if that wasn't enough, he painted it to look like wood. The next morning, he goes outside and the mailbox is still standing, and right next to it, a brand new bumper. Did he go too far, or not far enough? He took his snowboard on the trampoline. Nothing happened. He took his pogo stick on the trampoline. Nothing happened. But then he took his skateboard on the trampoline. I was fine thanks to my mom's camera from the 90s, and it still worked. And I know that because the next morning, we recorded ourselves microwaving fireworks. Good times. This guy would get jealous anytime his girlfriend would talk to another guy. So one night, they go out to dinner with his parents so they can meet her. And she gets along with his mom, but anytime his dad tries to talk to her, she ignores him. Eventually, the dad gets so annoyed he stands up and storms out of the restaurant. The guy looks at her and asks, "What's your problem?" And she's like, "You said don't talk to other guys." Ha! What do you think? Too petty? This guy's roommate kept taking all his snacks, but he wouldn't admit it. So he gets an idea. He buys a Pepsi, he pours half of it out, and he fills the rest with soy sauce. Next day, the guy's just chilling in his room when suddenly he hears, "Come in," he says. The roommate slams open the door, and he looks at him and he says, "Dude, you gotta try this. I think Pepsi changed their recipe." I don't know where that was going. Dude's a fucking idiot, I guess. This man tied a rope around a magnet, and when he tossed it in the water, it stuck to something so heavy he had to tie it to his car to pull it back up. And when he finally got it pulled up, he found a big metal box with a lock on it. So he grabbed a rock, broke the lock, opened the box, and called the cops. Turns out the box was full of stolen jewelry, and they had to take it as evidence. Would you have called the police? This guy just got liver surgery, but because he forgot his doctor's note, his boss wasn't gonna pay him. So he got an idea. Next day, he walks into his boss's office and he pulls out a bag with a liver in it and starts shaking it in his boss's face. Then he started doing it to his coworkers and even the customers. So the boss is freaking out, and 20 minutes later, the dude gets his paycheck. But here's the twist. It wasn't even his liver. So this one time, I found a wallet, and inside the wallet was a driver's license, so I searched the name up on Facebook. We had one mutual friend who I went to high school with, and it just so happened to be his wife. So I sent her a DM, and I get this voice message in return. "Who the f*** are you, and why you talking to my girl?" Now, I had a choice to make. Either I let this asshole know that I have his wallet, or I break in somewhere and leave his wallet as evidence. But no, I told him I found his wallet and we could meet up at a nearby gas station. So when we met up, he was super cool, and I just had to ask him, why were you so shitty to me when we first started talking? He was confused. He explained to me that he never talked to me and that his wife just told him that somebody had his wallet at the gas station. So I took out my phone, I played the message, and right then it was obvious that this was not his voice on the recording. So we stood there in awkward silence for what seemed like 20 minutes, and eventually he let out a sigh and asked, "You got a couch I could crash on for a few days?"